Nanny was hired to care for a wheelchair-bound millionaire's son. Within 2 hours, she quit. Dorothy Wilson had worked as a nanny for the wealthiest families in New York City over the past 20 years and had never run away from a job. At 58, she had seen it all in life and thought nothing could surprise her anymore. But on that Thursday afternoon, when she first stepped into the foyer of businesswoman Amanda Thompson's mansion in the Upper East Side, something in the air made her uneasy. The woman who had hired her over the phone had been very specific about one thing. Her 8-year-old son Ethan needed special care because she herself had mobility limitations. "Mrs. Dorothy?" a soft voice asked behind her. Dorothy turned and saw a woman around 35 with long, straight brown hair, wearing an elegant beige dress. She was seated in a modern, expensive wheelchair, her hands resting delicately in her lap. "That's me, Mrs. Amanda. It's a pleasure to meet you in person," Dorothy replied, adjusting the grey uniform she always wore on her first day of work. "The pleasure is mine. As we discussed on the phone, I need someone trustworthy to look after Ethan. He's in his room on the 2nd floor. Could you go up and introduce yourself to him?" Dorothy noticed Amanda spoke a bit tensely, avoiding direct eye contact, but she chalked it up to the natural nervousness of a mother leaving her child with a new person. "Of course, ma'am. And the boy's father. My ex-husband picks Ethan up only on alternate weekends. During the week, it's just the two of us," Amanda replied, and Dorothy detected a hint of bitterness in her voice. As she climbed the marble staircase, Dorothy took in the expensive paintings on the walls and the crystal chandelier dominating the foyer. This family had a lot of money, that much was obvious, but there was something else, a heavy atmosphere she couldn't quite define. On the 2nd floor, she easily found the boys' room. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear the sound of a video game coming from inside. "Ethan, I'm Dorothy, your new nanny." The boy looked up from the controller, and Dorothy saw a blonde child with light eyes and a sad expression. He was sitting on the bed surrounded by expensive toys, but he didn't seem happy. "Hi," he said, lowering the game's volume. "Are you going to stay here long?" "That depends on your mom and how well we get along, right? Why do you ask?" Ethan shrugged and turned his attention back to the game. Dorothy sat on the edge of the bed, watching him. There was something heavy about his small shoulders, as if he carried a burden too big for his age. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. "Ethan, your mom told me you need special care. Do you have any health issues?" The boy stopped the game completely and looked at her with a strange expression. "No, I don't have anything. The one with the problem is Mom," he murmured, but quickly corrected himself. "I mean, she's been in a wheelchair since Dad left." "I see. That must be hard for both of you." Ethan nodded, but Dorothy sensed he wanted to say more. The boy's eyes welled up with tears he tried to hide by turning back to the game. "Hey, how about showing me around the house? That way, I'll know where everything is," Dorothy suggested, trying to lift his spirits. "Okay." Ethan put the game away and stood up. "But we have to be quiet when we pass by Mom's room. She sleeps a lot during the day because she takes pain meds." They went downstairs slowly, with Ethan explaining where each room was. The house was truly impressive. A library, a formal dining room, a living room, a study, a gourmet kitchen. Everything decorated with great taste and money. "And that's Mom's room." Ethan pointed to a closed door on the ground floor. "She had to move down here after the accident." "What kind of accident did she have?" Ethan hesitated. "She fell down the stairs 3 years ago. The doctor said she'll never walk again." Dorothy nodded understandingly, but something in the boy's expression puzzled her. He seemed to be reciting a rehearsed story, not recounting something that had actually happened. They spent the afternoon playing in the garden. Ethan was a smart and sweet child, but Dorothy noticed he kept looking at the house windows, as if watching for something. When it was time for snacks, he insisted on preparing everything himself. "I know how, Mom taught me. She can't reach the high things in the kitchen," he explained, climbing onto a stool to get the glasses. "You don't have to, Ethan. I can—" "No," he replied too quickly, almost shouting. "Sorry, it's just that Mom doesn't like it when other people touch her things." Dorothy found it odd but respected it. After all, every family had its own rules, and she'd only been there a few hours. After the snack, Ethan said he wanted to rest for a while. Dorothy took the opportunity to explore the house further. Amanda had told her she could use any room, so she decided to check out the library. It was a beautiful room, with mahogany shelves from floor to ceiling and a leather armchair by the window. Dorothy was lost in admiration of the books when she heard footsteps upstairs. Footsteps. Her heart froze. Amanda had said she couldn't climb the stairs since the accident, but the sound was unmistakable. Someone walking on the second floor. Dorothy left the library slowly, trying not to make noise. The footsteps continued, coming from the direction of Ethan's room. She glanced at Amanda's door on the ground floor. It was closed, with no light underneath. She climbed the stairs carefully, stepping on the edges of the steps to avoid creaking. When she reached the second-floor hallway, she saw a female figure quickly entering Ethan's room. It was Amanda, walking normally without any difficulty. Dorothy hid behind a decorative column, her heart pounding. She couldn't be seeing this. Was Amanda pretending? But why? She stayed there for a few minutes, trying to process what she'd seen. Maybe it was some kind of experimental treatment. Maybe she could walk for short periods. There had to be a logical explanation. When Amanda left Ethan's room, Dorothy watched her descend the stairs normally, holding an envelope in her hands. Only then did she go down too, deliberately making noise to announce her presence. "Ethan, I'm up from my nap," she called, as if she'd just come upstairs. "I'm here, Aunt Dorothy." The boy's voice came from the living room. She found him sitting on the couch, playing with a tablet. Amanda was in her wheelchair beside him, as if she'd never left it. "How was his rest?" Amanda asked. "Very good. Ethan is such a polite boy," Dorothy replied, trying to keep her voice steady. But Ethan was looking at her with a strange expression, as if he knew she'd discovered something. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Dorothy tried to act normal, but she couldn't shake what she'd seen. Amanda walking, going up and down stairs like anyone else. When it was time to leave, Amanda walked her to the door. "Dorothy, I need you to know our family values discretion very highly. Ethan sometimes makes up stories like any child. I trust you'll be sensible enough not to indulge childish fantasies." "Of course, Mrs. Thompson, all children have imaginations." "Good. We'll see you tomorrow then." But when Dorothy got home to the modest apartment she shared with her daughter in Queens, she couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. Her 25-year-old daughter, Jessica, noticed something was off. "Mom, did something happen at your new job?" "I don't know, sweetie. I think I saw strange things." "What kind of things?" Dorothy hesitated. Was it crazy to say it? But she had known her daughter for years as a secretary at a medical clinic. Jessica understood complicated situations. "The new boss uses a wheelchair, but I saw her walking normally when she thought no one was looking." Jessica stopped scrolling on her phone and looked at her mother. "Mom, that's really serious. Are you sure about what you saw?" "Absolutely. She went up the stairs, into her son's room, came back down all normal. And the boy? Oh, Ethan, that boy is carrying some heavy secret. You can see it in his eyes." Jessica grew thoughtful for a few minutes. "Mom, you need to be careful. If this woman is faking a disability, she must have very serious reasons, and serious reasons can be dangerous." "I know, sweetie. But what about the boy? He's clearly suffering because of this." "For now, you should keep working as usual. But keep an eye on everything and write down anything strange." The next morning, Dorothy returned to the mansion with a mix of curiosity and unease. Amanda greeted her in the wheelchair, as always, but Dorothy now noticed details she'd missed before. Amanda's legs looked perfectly normal. There were no signs of muscle atrophy or other issues someone truly paraplegic would have after 3 years. Her clothes were carefully chosen to cover her legs, but when she moved in the chair, Dorothy could see they were healthy. "Good morning, Dorothy. Ethan is excited to see you. He really liked you yesterday." "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. I liked him very much too. Today I have some medical appointments. You'll be alone with him until 5. Ethan knows the house routine." After Amanda left, Ethan approached Dorothy with a seriousness far beyond his 8 years. "Aunt Dorothy, can I tell you something?" "Of course, Ethan. Anything." Did you see something yesterday?" Dorothy's heart raced. The boy knew. "What do you mean?" Ethan glanced around as if making sure they were alone. "Mom, she's not really, you know." "Ethan, I don't understand." Tears began rolling down the boy's face. "She can walk, Aunt Dorothy. She can walk just fine, but she pretends she can't and made me promise never to tell anyone." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. Dorothy knelt in front of Ethan and hugged him. The boy sobbed against her shoulder, as if he'd been holding that secret for far too long. "Why does your mum do this, Ethan?" "Because of Dad. She said if he finds out she doesn't really need the chair, he'll try to take me away to live far off with him and his new girlfriend." "And you don't want to live with your dad?" Ethan shook his head hard. "I want to stay with Mom. But it's so hard having to lie to everyone. At school, the kids sometimes joke because my mum is disabled, and I can't even defend her because she's not." Dorothy's heart broke. This child was being forced to carry an adult's secret, to live a lie that was clearly affecting his social and emotional life. "Ethan, how long has your mum been doing this?" "Since Dad left. 3 years. He sends Mom a lot of money because he thinks she needs special care because of me." "And you've never told anyone?" "Mommy said that if I tell anyone, we'll lose the house, the money, and Daddy will take me away. She said it's the only way we can stay together." Dorothy hugged the boy tighter. The situation was far more complicated than she had imagined. This wasn't just a simple lie. It was an elaborate fraud that was destroying Ethan's childhood. "Ethan, do you want me to help you?" He looked at her with hope in his eyes. "Can you help Mommy stop pretending, without making Daddy take me away?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise I'll try to understand everything before doing anything." They spent the rest of the morning talking. Ethan explained that his mother had indeed fallen down the stairs 3 years ago, but hadn't been seriously hurt. She had limped for a few days, and when her ex-husband saw her, he decided to use it to his advantage. "Daddy feels guilty because he left right after she got hurt. So he gives money for doctors, physical therapy, a nurse who comes here 3 times a week, everything. And the nurse doesn't suspect anything? Mommy always stays in the chair when she comes, and she takes medicine that makes her kinda sleepy. The nurse thinks she's really sick." Dorothy was shocked by how elaborate the scheme was. Amanda had built an entire system of lies, involving healthcare professionals and even medication. "Ethan, can you show me where your mom keeps her medicine?" They went to Amanda's room. Ethan knew the routine well and where everything was. Dorothy found several bottles of medication on the nightstand. She didn't know much about medicine, but some of the names seemed familiar. She discreetly wrote them down to look up later. "Aunt Dorothy, do you think I'm a bad kid for lying?" "Oh, Ethan, you're not bad. You're a child in a very tough situation. Sometimes adults put kids in positions where they don't have a choice. I just wish everything was normal, that Mommy didn't have to pretend and I could tell my friends the truth. And you will, Ethan. I promise we'll find a way." When Amanda returned at 5 in the afternoon, Dorothy watched her every move. The transition from the wheelchair to the car was theatrical, with groans of pain and careful movements. But Dorothy now knew it was all an act. "How was your day?" Amanda asked. "It was lovely. Ethan is a wonderful boy." "He didn't bother you with any strange stories, did he?" "No, ma'am. We spent the time playing and talking about school." But Ethan looked at Dorothy with pleading eyes, as if begging her to keep the secret he had shared. That night, Dorothy looked up the medication she had seen online. Her daughter Jessica helped, using contacts from the clinic where she worked. "Mom, these are for anxiety and depression, nothing to do with paralysis or mobility issues." So she really is lying about everything. And worse, if she's taking these regularly, she's risking her own health just to keep up the act. Dorothy stayed awake all night, thinking about the situation. On one side was a desperate mother harming herself and her son to keep custody. On the other was a child suffering under the weight of a secret he shouldn't have to carry. On her third day of work, Dorothy decided to watch even more closely. She arrived a few minutes early and stood outside the house, observing the windows. She saw Amanda walking around normally, making breakfast, tidying up. Only when she heard Dorothy's car in the driveway did she sit back in the wheelchair. Later, while Amanda was resting in her room, Dorothy found Ethan crying in the bathroom. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Last night, I had a nightmare. I dreamed that everyone found out about Mommy and that they took me away forever." "Ethan, have you talked to your mum about how you feel?" "I tried, but she always says it's temporary, that things will get better soon. But it's been 3 years, and nothing has changed." "And your dad? How is he with you?" Ethan thought for a moment. "He's nice, but his girlfriend? She doesn't like me very much, and they want to move to another country for work. If I go with them, I'll never see Mommy again." Dorothy began to understand the complexity of the situation. Amanda wasn't just lying for money. She truly believed she'd lose her son if the truth came out. "Ethan, would you like me to talk to your mom?" "You'd do that? But she'll get mad. Sometimes adults need to hear the truth even when it hurts." That afternoon, when Amanda returned, Dorothy asked to speak privately. "Mrs. Thompson, may I talk to you about Ethan?" "Of course. Is he behaving well?" "He's behaving perfectly, but I'm worried about his emotional state." Amanda tensed. "What do you mean?" "He seems to carry a heavy burden for an 8-year-old, like he's keeping a secret." "Dorothy, kids sometimes exaggerate." "Mrs. Thompson," Dorothy gently interrupted, "I know about the wheelchair." The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda turned pale and her hands trembled. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you walking around the house. Ethan told me the truth. He's suffering terribly because of this." Amanda covered her face with her hands and began to cry. "Are you going to report me? Tell my ex-husband?" "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to understand why you're doing this to your son." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. Between sobs, Amanda told her side of the story. Her ex-husband, Michael, had left her when she needed him most, right after her fall down the stairs. He'd gotten a job overseas and wanted to take Ethan with him. "I pretended to be worse off than I really was just to buy time. But when I saw he felt guilty and started paying extra alimony for my special care, I thought I could use it to make sure Ethan stayed with me." "But that was 3 years ago, Mrs. Thompson. Why didn't you stop?" "Because it worked. Michael pays for everything. The house, the medicine, the fake physical therapy, the nurse. And he doesn't try to take Ethan anymore because he thinks the boy needs to care for me." "And Ethan, have you thought about what this is doing to him? I thought he'd understand when he got older, that he'd see it was the only way to keep our family together." Dorothy took a deep breath. "Mrs. Thompson, with all due respect, Ethan doesn't understand. He's suffering. He has nightmares, feels guilty for lying, gets bullied at school. This situation is destroying his childhood. But if I stop, Michael will find out and sue me. He'll prove I lied and get full custody. Have you sought legal help to understand your real options?" "No. I've always been afraid a lawyer would report me." Dorothy realized Amanda was trapped in a web of lies that had grown so big she couldn't see a way out. "Mrs. Thompson, may I suggest something? How about we talk to Ethan together? He needs to know you understand his pain." Amanda hesitated, but agreed. When they called Ethan in, he came with red eyes, as if he'd been crying. "Ethan," said Amanda, rising from the wheelchair and kneeling in front of her son, "Aunt Dorothy made me realize you've been suffering because of our lies." Ethan ran into his mother's arms. "Mom, I can't take it anymore. I want you to stop pretending." "But if I stop, your dad might try to take you away." "I don't want to leave, but I also don't want to keep lying to everyone." Dorothy watched mother and son embrace, both crying, and felt this was the moment for an honest conversation. "Ethan, If your mother stopped pretending, would you still want to stay with her even if it meant less money? Maybe a smaller house? Yes, I just want a real mom, not one who pretends. Amanda looked at her son with a mix of guilt and surprise. You'd rather we were poor but honest? Yes, Mom. At school, I always have to make excuses when parents are called for activities. You can never go because you have to pretend you can't walk. Dorothy saw this conversation was a wake-up call for Amanda. The mother was finally understanding the price her son was paying for her charade. Mrs. Thompson, may I suggest you seek professional help? A family law attorney could guide you on your real options. But what if they find out I lied? What if I get sued? And what if they don't? And Ethan grows up carrying this trauma, Dorothy replied gently. Amanda grew thoughtful for a few minutes, holding her son's hands. Ethan, can you forgive me for putting you through this? I forgive you, Mom. But please stop pretending. I'll try to find a solution. But I need help. Dorothy sensed an opening. My daughter works at a medical clinic and knows some trustworthy attorneys. If you'd like, I can ask for a referral. In the following days, Dorothy noticed a change in Ethan. Even though Amanda hadn't completely abandoned the act, their honest conversation had lifted a weight off the boy's shoulders. Amanda, meanwhile, was visibly anxious. She had scheduled a consultation with the attorney Jessica had recommended, but was terrified of the possible consequences. Dorothy, what if he says I could go to jail for fraud? Mrs. Thompson, a good attorney will guide you toward the best options, not the worst-case scenarios. Besides, you're trying to resolve this voluntarily. That counts for a lot. And Ethan, is he doing better? Much better. Yesterday he told me he slept through the night without nightmares for the first time in months. When Amanda returned from her consultation with the attorney, Dr. Richard Powell, she was surprisingly calmer. What did he say? Dorothy asked. That my case isn't as rare as I thought. Many mothers do desperate things to keep custody of their children. He said there are ways to resolve this without me losing Ethan. What kind of ways? First, he wants to understand more about the situation with Michael, why I was so afraid of losing custody. He suspects there might be more to the story. How so? Michael was always very controlling. When we were married, he'd threatened to leave me with nothing if I didn't do what he wanted. Dr. Powell thinks I may have rights I didn't know about. Dorothy was intrigued. Maybe the situation was even more complex than she'd imagined. And what about the wheelchair lie? He said if I stop now and return the money I wrongfully received, I might avoid criminal charges. But I have to do it before Michael finds out on his own. And are you willing to do that? Amanda looked out the window where Ethan was playing in the yard. Look at him, Dorothy. Yesterday he asked if he could invite a friend from school over. It's been years since he's asked for that. Just because of our conversation, he's already happier. So the answer is yes. The answer is that I'll try. Dr. Richard wants to meet with me and Ethan together next week. He said it's important to understand the child's perspective. Over the following days, Dorothy observed Amanda preparing for the appointment. She was nervous but determined. For the first time in 3 years, she seemed to be facing the situation head-on. Ethan was also anxious, but for different reasons. Aunt Dorothy, do you think the lawyer can make Mom stop pretending without Dad taking me away? I don't know, Ethan. But I do know your mom is finally trying to find a real solution to the problem. What if it doesn't work? If it doesn't work, at least you'll know you tried to do the right thing, and that's very important. The following week, when Amanda and Ethan returned from their appointment with Dr. Richard, they both seemed lighter. How did it go? Dorothy asked. Better than I expected, Amanda replied. Dr. Richard talked a lot with Ethan, and it became clear that my ex-husband has been using emotional blackmail for years. What kind of blackmail? Michael always threatened to take Ethan away if I didn't do exactly what he wanted, even before the divorce. Dr. Richard said that's a form of psychological abuse. And does that change anything? It changes everything. Dr. Richard is going to look into Michael's history and will probably prove he's been using our son as a way to control me. This might even turn the situation in my favor. Ethan ran to hug Dorothy. Aunt Dorothy, the lawyer said I was very brave for telling the truth, and that now Mom won't have to pretend anymore. That's wonderful, Ethan. And there's more, Amanda continued. Doctor, Richard said the fact that I'm trying to resolve this voluntarily and that I have a credible witness like you will weigh heavily in my favor if this goes to court. A witness? Yes. You've seen the whole process. You watched my transition from a desperate person doing the wrong things to a mother trying to fix her mistakes for her son's sake. Dorothy was moved. She had entered that house thinking it would just be another job, and now she was helping rebuild a family. In the weeks that followed, Amanda gradually began to drop the act. First, she reduced the fake medication. Then she cancelled some physical therapy sessions. At home, she stopped using the wheelchair entirely. Ethan was overjoyed. For the first time in 3 years, he had a mother who could play with him in the garden, go upstairs, and attend school events. "Aunt Dorothy," he said one day, "yesterday Mom walked to the school meeting, and when the other mums asked about the wheelchair, she said she'd had an amazing improvement." Dorothy smiled. Amanda was finding creative ways to step out of the lie without revealing the whole truth at once. But things got complicated when Michael decided to pay a surprise visit. It was a Thursday afternoon when he showed up at the door. Dorothy was in the kitchen with Ethan when they heard the doorbell. "It's Dad," Ethan said, running to the window. Amanda was in the garden, watering the plants, walking normally. "Ethan, go warn your mom," Dorothy said quickly. But it was too late. Michael had already gone around the house and seen Amanda standing, walking. Dorothy heard raised voices from the garden. Through the window, she saw Michael gesturing aggressively while Amanda tried to explain. "Ethan, stay inside," Dorothy said, stepping out into the garden. "Michael, calm down," Amanda was saying. "I can explain." "Explain. Explain how you've been deceiving me for 3 years. How you made me pay thousands for this charade." "Michael, please don't shout in front of Ethan." "Ethan? Ethan knew about this too, didn't he? You both made a fool out of me." Dorothy Wilson stepped closer. "Mr. Michael, perhaps we should talk calmly." "And who are you?" Michael turned to her aggressively. "I'm Ethan's nanny, and I can tell you the situation is more complicated than it seems." "Oh, really? So you were in on it too?" "There was no scheme," Dorothy replied firmly. "There was a desperate mother trying to protect her son the only way she knew how." Michael laughed sarcastically. "Protect? She was stealing from me." "She was trying to make sure Ethan wouldn't be taken away from her against his will." "Against his will? He's a child. He doesn't know what's best for him." That's when Ethan appeared at the door, tears in his eyes. "Yes, I do, Dad. I want to stay with Mom." Michael was surprised to see his son. "Ethan, you don't understand. Your mother lied to everyone. I know she lied, and I know it was wrong, but she only did it because she was afraid you'd take me away forever. I would never. Dad, you always said if Mom didn't do what you wanted, you'd take me far away, even when you were married." Michael fell silent for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the accusation. Dorothy seized the pause. "Mr. Michael, Ethan has suffered a lot because of this situation, both from his mother's lie and from the fear of being separated from her. Maybe you two can talk like adults and find a solution that's best for him." "A solution? She owes me thousands of dollars, and she's willing to pay back every cent," said Amanda Thompson. "I've already contacted a lawyer. I'm getting my life in order to repay everything you were wrongly charged." "You got a lawyer? For what?" "To do things the right way, so Ethan doesn't have to live in fear anymore." Michael looked at his son, who was still crying silently. "Ethan, do you really want to stay with your mother?" "Yes, Dad, but I also want to be able to visit you without being afraid you won't bring me back." Michael took a deep breath. It was clear he hadn't expected to face this situation. "Amanda, you understand what you did was a crime?" "I do, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. But I'm also prepared to fight for my rights as a mother." "What rights?" Amanda looked at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. "Michael, you've used emotional blackmail against me for years, always threatening to take Ethan away if I didn't do what you wanted. My lawyer says that's also a crime." Michael looked visibly uncomfortable. "That's ridiculous." "Ridiculous? Then why are you here threatening to take Ethan away again? It's exactly what you've always done." Dorothy watched the argument, realizing Michael truly had a controlling behavior pattern. Amanda had lied. but her motivations were starting to make more sense. "Dad," Ethan approached his father, "you can be mad at Mom, but please don't take me away. I promise I can visit you every weekend just like before." Michael looked at his son for a long moment. "Ethan, do you understand your mother did something very wrong?" "I do, but I also understand she was scared, and I was scared too." "Scared of what?" "That you'd take me away and I'd never see Mom again." Michael sat down on a garden chair, clearly shaken. I never realized you were both so afraid." "Michael," Amanda said carefully, stepping closer, "I know I did something terrible, but can you try to understand why I did it?" I need to process all this." Dorothy decided to intervene again. "Mr. Michael, may I suggest something? How about you both talk calmly, maybe with a professional mediator? Ethan needs to see his parents can solve problems without fighting and threats." Michael looked at Dorothy with curiosity. "Are you just a nanny or are you a therapist?" "I'm just a nanny who's worked for many families and knows how much children suffer when parents can't talk to each other civilly." "And do you think there's a solution to this mess?" "I do, but only if both of you put Ethan's well-being above hurt feelings." Michael grew thoughtful for a few minutes. "Amanda, are you really going to pay the money back?" "I am. I've already started selling some things, and I'll get a real job to cover the rest." "And were you really afraid I'd take Ethan away?" "Michael, you threatened to do that hundreds of times during our marriage, even after the divorce. How could I not be afraid?" Michael lowered his head. I think sometimes I said things in anger that I shouldn't have." "Sometimes," Ethan approached his father. "Dad, you always said that. Every time Mom didn't do what you wanted." "Ethan, Dad, I love you, but I love Mom too, and I don't want to have to choose between you." Michael hugged his son and Dorothy saw tears in his eyes. "You won't have to choose, son, I promise." That was the turning point. In the weeks that followed, Michael and Amanda began attending family mediation sessions. Ethan kept visiting his father on weekends, but now without the constant fear of not returning home. Amanda got a job as a consultant at a marketing firm and started paying Michael back in monthly installments. She sold some expensive furniture and jewelry to make a more substantial down payment. Free from the weight of the secret, Ethan flourished at school. His teachers noted the impressive improvement in his academic performance and social relationships. "Aunt Dorothy," he said one day, "now I can invite friends over to our house and I can talk about Mom without having to make things up. And how does that make you feel? Free, like I can finally breathe properly for the first time." Dorothy was moved. Seeing Ethan's transformation was one of the most rewarding experiences of her career as a nanny. 3 months after the confrontation with Michael, Amanda made an unexpected proposal to Dorothy. "Dorothy, I know you could work for families who pay much more than I can right now. Mrs. Thompson, let me finish. I wanted to ask if you'd like to be our permanent housekeeper, not just Ethan's nanny, but part of our family. I know I can't pay what I used to, but I can offer stability and, well, a family that truly values you." Dorothy was surprised. In 20 years of work, she'd never received such an offer. I need to think. Of course. But I want you to know you saved our family. Without you, Ethan and I would still be trapped in that terrible lie." That night, Dorothy talked to her daughter about the proposal. "Mom, do you enjoy working there?" "Very much. And Ethan, that boy has become special to me." "Then accept it. You've always said you wanted to work for a family who really needed you, not just for status." "It's true, and Amanda has really changed. She's trying hard to be a better mother. And Michael is changing too. He started individual therapy to understand his controlling behavior. He's making an effort to be a present father without being threatening." A week later, Dorothy gave Amanda her answer. "I accept your offer, but on one condition." "What?" "That this family never keeps secrets from each other again. If there's a problem, you talk. If there's fear, you share it. If there's love, you show it." Amanda smiled with tears in her eyes. "Promise." Ethan ran to hug Dorothy. "Now you'll stay with us forever?" "For as long as you want me and as long as I can, sweetheart." 6 months later, Dorothy was hosting Ethan's 9th birthday party in the garden. Michael was there with his new girlfriend, who had turned out to be much nicer than anyone expected. Amanda was laughing with other mothers from Ethan's school, no longer hiding behind any pretense. But the most beautiful sight was Ethan himself, running around with his friends, bright-eyed and carefree, no longer carrying the weight of adult secrets on his small shoulders. "Aunt Dorothy," he came up to her during the party, "do you remember when you asked me if I wanted you to help me?" "I do remember, yes. You kept your promise. You helped Mom stop pretending, and Dad stop making threats. Now I have a real family." "You always had a real family, Ethan. They just needed to learn how to talk, honestly. And will you stay with us forever?" Dorothy looked around, seeing Amanda chatting animatedly with Michael about Ethan's school plans, seeing the healthy normality that had settled into that home. "Forever is a long time, sweetheart. But as long as you need me and I can help, I'll be here." "Then it'll be forever," Ethan said with the absolute certainty of a child, "because we'll always need you." Dorothy smiled, feeling she had finally found not just a job but a family who had chosen to be part of her life as much as she had chosen to be part of theirs. Later that night, after all the guests had left and Ethan had gone to sleep, Amanda sat beside Dorothy on the porch. "Dorothy, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Why didn't you report me on the first day? Why did you decide to help me instead of exposing me?" Dorothy thought for a moment. "Because I saw a desperate mother, not a criminal, and because I saw a child suffering, not an accomplice. Sometimes people do the wrong things for the right reasons. My role wasn't to judge you, but to help you find a better path." "And what if it hadn't worked? What if I hadn't been able to change? Then I would have had to make harder decisions. But you showed you wanted to change, and Ethan needed someone to believe you could be a better family. Have you ever regretted staying?" Dorothy glanced through the window, where she could see Ethan sleeping peacefully in his room, finally free from the nightmares that had haunted him. "Never. This was the best decision I've made in 20 years of working." The end. And what did you think of this story of new beginnings and overcoming? Could you feel the emotion of watching a family transform through truth and love? Tell us in the comments which part touched you the most and whether you believe Dorothy made the right choice. Leave a like if the story moved you and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming tales.